AI requires a lot of compute power, and the cost for your AI workloads can spiral. That is, unless you're running on OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. This was the cloud built for AI, a blazing fast, enterprise-grade platform for your infrastructure, database apps, and all of your AI workloads.
Right now, Oracle can cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. Minimum financial commitment and other terms apply. Offer ends March 31st. See if you qualify at oracle.com/WSJTech. Oracle.com/WSJTech.
Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live here on 790 KABC in the 4 o'clock hour, weekday afternoons. We also are streaming live online worldwide at KABC.com, and you're on demand. Mottek On Money podcast. KABC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks finishing mostly higher today, with Fed Chairman Jerome Powell in the spotlight today, suggesting little urgency for further interest rate cuts. And we're awaiting that January Consumer Price Index report that'll be coming out first thing tomorrow morning, an hour ahead of the opening bell on Wall Street. What's the rush was Chairman Powell's main message on Capitol Hill today, with the chairman describing the economy as strong and the labor market as solid. Fed Chairman Powell delivering a message to Congress to start 2 days of testimony on Capitol Hill. He said because the economy is doing well, the Fed can take its time to decide when and whether to lower benchmark short-term interest rates. In his words, he said, we're in a pretty good place with the economy. We want to make more progress on inflation, and we think our policy rate is in a good place. We don't see any reason to be in a hurry to reduce it further, to quote the Fed chairman testifying today before the Senate Banking Committee. Fed Chairman Powell said he could not really say what the effects of President Trump's policies on import tariffs might mean for the economy or inflation. He said in his words, we see proposals, but it's so hard to see what is going to happen. The Fed chairman also believes the Treasury Department's critical payment system is safe and that the Fed is committed to carrying out its role in the system with integrity. Powell said that DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, had not tried to access Fed information, Fed computers, or its systems. In an exchange with Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, he committed to inform the Senate Banking Committee of any such attempt. We're watching the developments, of course. The Fed chairman also said the Fed would examine concerns that customers are being debanked for political views or crypto involvement. That, of course, another hot-button issue that was brought up today. The Fed chairman will be appearing before the House Financial Services Committee tomorrow. Before that, though, we will get the latest reading on inflation from the Labor Department, and economists expect to see the prices rose again for the month of January by 0.3%, though the annual rate might be unchanged at 2.9%. In any case, it'll be above the Fed's 2% annual target. In all this, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed higher today by 123 points. The NASDAQ fell 70. The S&P 500 ended up 2 points. We did see longer-term Treasury bond yields tick slightly higher, with the yield on the 10-year note now at 4.54%. President Trump today urging Israel to cancel its ceasefire deal with Hamas and let all hell break out if Hamas does not return hostages still being held in Gaza by noon this Saturday. Quoting the president, earlier today, Hamas threatened to postpone the next hostage release scheduled to take place on Saturday until further notice, accusing Israel of breaking the ceasefire deal. If Hamas does not return Israeli hostages by Saturday noon, the ceasefire will be terminated, says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He released a statement following a meeting with his security cabinet today. I'll be discussing the latest developments in the Middle East this hour with Middle East expert Lisa DAFTARI, the editor of the Foreign Desk. In all this, the price of oil moving higher for the third straight session today, with the benchmark London Brent crude price moving higher by $1.13 to 77 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate in New York up $1 to 73.32 a barrel. Closer to home, the massive recovery effort continues following the deadly and devastating fires throughout Southern California last month. The Eaton and Palisades fire that hit Los Angeles County, leveling more than 10,000 structures, leaving tens of thousands of people homeless. The crisis impacting the supply in the rental market here in Southern California, an area already suffering from a severe affordable housing shortage. We'll get the very latest on what's happening on that front with Daniel YUKELSON, who is the executive director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, who will be joining me live later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the Fed chairman on Capitol Hill, gold, crypto, the whole works now. Joining us live now is finance and management editor for Investors Business Daily, Matt KRANTZ. Good afternoon to you, Matt.
Hi.
Great to have you with us here. A pretty big day here with the Fed chairman in the spotlight and reaction here in the markets. Give us your view of things here at the moment.
Yeah, so right now I think the market's under the trance of the tariff. Every day there's a new threat of a tariff. Now we've got a threat of aluminum and steel tariffs. And it's not just the tariffs that are disruptive to the economy and to the market. It's the uncertainty around the tariffs. So are they going to be around in 30 days? Are they going to be around in a week? It's hard to know if you're a company, let's say you make bicycles out of aluminum. How do you know if you should even stockpile the aluminum because you don't even know if the tariffs are going to be in place? So I think there's a lot of just kind of policy-induced confusion.
President imposing 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and a lot of discussion today, you're right, about how this will impact prices for consumers and potentially impact stock prices as well. At Investors Business Daily, you, of course, digest all of that. What is the current thinking there?
Well, you have to just kind of take what you can get. And so we just had a pretty good earnings season. More than half the companies in the S&P 500 have reported, and the numbers are coming in pretty good so far. So far, the blended rate is 16.4% growth over the same quarter a year ago, which is actually pretty great. It's the highest earnings growth rate for the index since 2021. So that's really good. On the negative, and then on the positive side, also 77% of companies have reported higher earnings than they expected, which is matching the 5-year average. The only thing that I would say is a little bit confusing or concerning is we're starting to get more. The beats are getting smaller, so companies only beat by about 7.5% on average, which is below the 8.5% average going back for 5 years. These numbers are from FactSet, by the way. So we've got good earnings, that's good, and we've got some momentum, but the momentum is starting to slip away.
Very interesting. And U.S. Steel stock has moved higher over the past couple of days. President trying to protect domestic steel production and U.S. Steel moving higher again today. About a half a dollar higher to 39 and change. What about that stock, which we hadn't been talking about up until recently when that possible merger deal came up with the Japanese steel company, which was rejected, and now tariffs certainly in the mix here.
And so I guess tariffs are great if it's your industry that's being protected, and that's usually a kind of a policy debate. So I mean, if you sell ham sandwiches and there's a tariff on ham sandwiches, it's the greatest thing. It's like a gift from heaven for you. But it causes a tax on the rest of the economy. So we may see U.S. Steel, which was one of the worst performing stocks you could name, perk up. I guess that's great if you own U.S. Steel. But what if you're a consumer of steel, which most of us are, and you're buying steel, not selling it, and that's more of an uncertainty.
All right, AI again in focus with the one and only Elon Musk reportedly offering nearly $97.5 billion for OpenAI. Sam Altman says no thank you to that offer. We're seeing that drama play out. What do you see happening there?
Yeah, so AI is really fascinating because it was such a big driver of the economy and the stock market. So NVIDIA last year was one of the top stocks. It was just absolutely on fire, went up a huge amount. But if you look at this year, it's a little bit different. So NVIDIA stock year to date is actually down, not by much, 1.1%, but it's still down. And that's a real issue because it's one of the most highly valued stocks in the S&P 500, so it has a direct impact on anyone that owns the S&P 500, which most of us do. But it's also kind of a sign that maybe this life jacket that was thrown to the market is kind of losing a little of its luster. Just tonight, another AI play, Super Microcomputer, they reported the results. Ironically, that's been one of the best stocks of the year, but the stock went down after hours because they're warning that their revenues aren't going to be as strong as many people expected. So the shift now is away from the people who make the AI and towards the people who implement the AI. And that's why Palantir has turned into the hottest stock of the year in the S&P 500. It's up huge. It's up almost 50% this year because it's taking the stuff that the AI companies are making and implementing in its solution that it sells to other companies and governments. I think that's where AI is going.
On there live with Matt KRANTZ from Investors Business Daily. AI, we see NVIDIA at down nearly $1 today to 132 and change. The stock, of course, took a hit when that DeepSeek news hit, rattled the entire tech space, in addition to AI names, including NVIDIA. Are we still seeing the fallout from the DeepSeek story that came out just a couple of weeks ago?
I think that's part of it. That's part of it, because so what DeepSeek was is it showed that you didn't need NVIDIA chips to make an amazing AI agent, and you don't need all this power to do it either. You could do it by just training your model on the cheap. It's kind of that disruptive technology that tech is so famous for. So that's caused that kind of set the question marks in place. But now, I think at some point some of these AI models are good enough. Like I've got AI in my email. It's an amazing thing. I just send a thank you note to my brother, and it sends an amazingly written note. I don't think that having another NVIDIA chip is going to make it a better thank you note.
Did it come from the heart, Matt?
It sure did, and I hope he's not listening right now.
Isn't that something?
Sorry, Mark.
Well, you have a heart of gold, I know that. And speaking of gold, what about gold here at or near all-time highs this week?
Yeah, so usually with gold, it's hard to know why it's rallying. But the great thing about what's going on now is it's no surprise. We all know why it's going, because there's a threat of tariffs of 20 or more % against some of our largest trading partners. So that in itself is inflationary. And then you've got the little fun stories like the eggs. I tried to buy eggs at my Whole Foods market the other day. Not only are they expensive, they're not even available. They were completely sold out. So when there's high inflation, people freak out, understandably, and they buy gold. And it's interesting, they're buying gold, not Bitcoin this time around, because I think they want to make sure they're covered.
Looks like they're buying silver too. We've seen silver have an impressive run, certainly in the past year, and this year as well, above $32 an ounce. And platinum, we're keeping an eye on platinum these days. There was a time when platinum was a lot more expensive than gold, but that is not the case any longer, with platinum at 1,036 and change here at the moment. You cover those two as well, silver and platinum?
Yeah, they're a little different than gold because they have some industrial usage, but they're pretty much the same. It's kind of a bet on inflation. They're denominated in dollars, so when people worry about inflation, they buy these metals. It's really interesting this year. We're seeing a shift away from kind of speculation. People want cash flow, and they want something they can feel, touch. And I think that's what's going on with these precious metals.
On the live with Matt KRANTZ from Investors Business Daily. Let's get to the exciting stuff now. Crypto. We heard from the president's crypto czar last week at his first news conference. Obviously, the whole administration is very crypto friendly. We saw that big run up in Bitcoin right after the election and the inauguration. We saw a big pop there with a lot of the crypto names getting a big lift. Now we see Bitcoin back down to around 95,000. It got down to around 91,000 after that DeepSeek news came out, right? What are your thoughts? I know you do a dispassionate view on the crypto space. We talked to the biggest fans here as well as the harshest critics. How do you weigh in on what's happening in crypto?
Yeah, so I think what's happening is no one can understand why crypto did so well and gold did so poorly, because they seem to both be like stores of value. I think what we've learned this year is that we're not joking around now. Now we've got real inflationary pressures. I mean, we're not just talking about expensive eggs. We're talking about across-the-board tariffs on China, which is our largest trading partner. So that in itself is inflationary. I mean, there's no debate about that. I'm sure you can find someone who would debate it, but it's hard to. And as a result, if you want to protect yourself against inflation, you don't want to mess around. You want to buy the real thing. And for a lot of people, that's been gold for centuries.
You've raised some very interesting points during this conversation. What are investors doing about the egg prices you mentioned? We don't want any egg on our faces here. What are there investment opportunities here with the price of eggs soaring?
Well, that is hilarious. One of the hottest stocks are egg companies. One, I'm trying to remember its name. They have open range, free range farming. I don't have the story in front. We did a story on it and we named it. And then there's another large producer, and their stocks are both really impressive. And I think that's what people are doing is they're trying to capitalize on this egg shortage. And it's not just a price thing. It's not just there's a supply shortage, of course, due to the bird flu, but there's also a demand spike. Protein is kind of a fashionable food, especially with people on Ozempic for some reason. So the demand for eggs is through the roof. People are eating them raw even. So I think it's a perfect storm for eggs. So if you can't buy your eggs, you might as well just buy the stock.
No yolk. We're on the air live with Matt KRANTZ. By the way, I've got your article here. S&P 500 beaters is the headline. Two stocks cash in on soaring egg prices. Shares of the two egg producers, Cal-Maine Foods. CALM is the ticker symbol of that one, CALM, and Vital Farms, VITL, are up quite a bit. At last check, up around 90% for Cal-Maine and about 157% for Vital Farms. So those are the two big names in the egg world on Wall Street.
Absolutely. Vital Farms is really intriguing. It's been a hot stock for actually a long time. They they're really serious about their free range, and they even named their hens, and and it's really something. And so almost every store in town now sells their eggs, including I think the major grocery store, the major like chain stores.
Do they name the eggs too?
I think they do some fun stuff, like you can find out like where your egg came from and stuff like that. I never really dug into it to that degree.
I'll name them later. Matt, let me ask you this. Tomorrow we'll be getting the reading on inflation. We'll see what the egg readings are there when we get the consumer price index tomorrow morning ahead of the opening bell. What's your expectation on what the inflation number will look like tomorrow?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been trying to think about that. I'm so bad at guessing that because I can't. When you drive around and you see high gas prices, so you think that inflation is going to be high, but that's just one piece of the basket. So there's so many pieces of this basket and beyond just eggs. I think it's going to be up, but I can't. I mean, I wouldn't put any money on that.
All right, and looks like there's upward inflation here. Given you're one of us here in Southern California. Hope you and your family, your colleagues here, made it through the firestorms. But obviously, we're in the midst of this tremendous rebuilding effort here. There's been a lot of talk about how commodity prices will be impacted by the rebuilding here with lumber and concrete and other things. Certainly going to be in very, very high demand. Copper as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's just going to add more pressure. I mean, just as people want to own gold and platinum and silver, they're going to want to own copper and steel, and then you've got tariffs on top of it. It's just a perfect storm for people wanting to buy hard assets, and they want dollars and they want cash flow, and it's just like it's kind of an interesting thing to watch in real time.
All right. At this point, what are your market monitors saying about where this thing goes from here, and any specific places where you're putting money now into or taking it off the table?
Well, markets, there's one thing that markets hate more than anything else, and that's uncertainty. And we've got that in spades. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, there might be a new tariff on some country we've never heard of. Maybe there'll be more tariffs. And I think the tariff fear might subside if we realize that it's just being done as kind of a brinkmanship game to show off that someone's being tough. So that's what everyone thinks. But if these tariffs stick around, and that's kind of a major issue that the market's going to have to kind of contend with. The only thing that might help on the other side is as we get closer to tax time, there's more talk about tax cuts, because that's the part of the new administration that people were kind of excited about. That was the part that sparked the Trump rally. And we haven't heard much about that at all. So maybe if the tariff stuff dies down a little bit and the tax stuff picks up, that could help.
All right, we heard from the Fed chairman today. We'll be hearing from him again tomorrow when he basically, we're told, will repeat the same thing he said today, but then we'll be taking questions from members of the House Financial Services Committee. Anything that caught your attention in all that today, and any surprises expected tomorrow?
No, I thought you summarized it really well at the open, and it was the same thing that I was kind of interested in, is how he's talking about he's in no rush. So it seems like if you read between the lines, it indicates that he's kind of satisfied with the way things are going right now. So anyone who thinks we're going to get a lift or a life jacket from the Fed to save them from the Trump tariff tirade, I don't think you're going to get it.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks for taking the call this afternoon. I know you're going to get busy making an omelet this afternoon or something with eggs, I have a feeling. So thank you very much, Matt KRANTZ from the Authoritative Investors Business Daily, for joining us live here this afternoon on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. The Dow higher by 123 points at the closing bell today. We're at 44,594. The S&P 500 up 2 at 6,068, and the NASDAQ down 70 at 19,644. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell in the spotlight on Capitol Hill. He's in no hurry to cut interest rates again. That was the main thing we heard from the Fed Chairman today. We'll be back on Capitol Hill tomorrow to testify before the House Financial Services Committee. The price of gold still hovering at or near record highs right now at $2,927 and change, down about $5 here at the moment. Silver is above $32 an ounce. Price of oil moving higher by $1 today at $73.32 a barrel. Nervous times in the Middle East once again. The yield in the 10-year note is back up to 4.53%. NVIDIA shares pulling back 77 cents at $132 and change. U.S. Steel up 56 cents at $39.26. The egg stocks mentioned, Vital Farms pulling back 30 cents at 35 and change. And Cal-Maine Foods up more than $4 today at $113.98. And now the latest news here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. The unthinkable has happened here in Southern California, with the homeless crisis in LA getting even worse, compounded by the firestorm disaster in Southern California. In addition to homes, apartments laying in ruins, businesses have also been wiped out by the thousands, impacting the livelihoods of thousands of people who've been left without jobs. The Eaton and Palisades fires that swept through Los Angeles County last month leveled more than 10,000 structures, left tens of thousands of residents homeless. The crisis also impacting the supply of the rental market here in the Los Angeles area, an area already suffering from a severe affordable housing shortage. Joining us live now, Daniel YUKELSON, the Executive Director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on, Frank.
We spoke right after the firestorm hit, and I know the Apartment Association had asked for help for those displaced by the wildfires. Give us an update on what the association is doing in the face of this catastrophe here.
Well, immediately after the fires, Frank, we put up a listing site of available rental units, and it's just a huge outpouring from property owners wanting to help. Within literally 48 hours, we had well over 1,000 listings of available apartment units, both in the immediate areas of the fires and really throughout the greater LA area, even some listings that were out of state. And today we have well over 2,000 listings. We've had thousands of people hit our website looking for housing. Many of the people that posted listings are our members, some aren't. And what we've seen is just an outpouring of Angelenos that really want to help, and they've responded to the emergency. We've seen first-time property owners putting their house on the market for rent, people willing to rent their second homes, rent their primary homes, and move temporarily into their second home. So we're seeing a lot of new-time rental housing providers coming onto the market. And we've had offers from many of our members and large property owners offering to help with other things like providing funding, providing furniture, supplies, many of the things that people who basically had their homes devastated and complete losses are in desperate need of today. So, in times of emergency, communities like ours have always come together to provide help.
And on that point, what is the association's website for people that are still looking for a place at this point?
It's aagla.org/listings, and there's plenty of open listings there today. Like I said, there's nearly 2,000 listings. People just need to put in the zip code that they're interested in or the number of bedrooms, and the number of listings will pop up in response to that. And on top of that, we put together a resource website with all kinds of tips and information that people need about filing insurance claims, where to go for help. And, I hate to refer to other organizations, but the Beverly Hills Bar Association put together an incredible webinar going through the whole process of filing insurance claims and how to deal with your insurance company, whether you need a public adjuster or need to hire an attorney, and how to document your claim. And then I really suggest that people look at that. We also have a link to that on our resource page, but people could just Google Beverly Hills Bar wildfire, and they'll be able to see that video. It's a little over an hour, and it's just full of great information that people need if they've been impacted by the wildfires.
That's great. We've done many programs with that association, and certainly always excellent. So thanks for bringing that to our attention as well. And what about the recovery? By the way, have you calculated how many apartment buildings or apartments have been destroyed in this disaster? Has anybody made a calculation? Obviously, a lot of private homes were devastated, but have you made a calculation on how many multifamily homes were destroyed?
Well, what I've heard, Frank, and there was about 16,000 total structures that were lost in the fire. According to information that we've gotten from the City of Los Angeles' housing department, there's approximately 750 multifamily properties that were destroyed in the fire. So quite a number of renters have been displaced as a result of these fires.
What is the outlook for rebuilding these places?
As a rental property owner, former planning commissioner in a city, I think it's going to be extremely challenging getting the amount of materials that are needed, getting the labor to come in to the LA area and rebuild this many structures is going to be very difficult. And it's something that's going to occur over a very long time. And, of course, in an emergency, there's a panic situation taking place. And so people need to, property owners who've lost their properties or have had damaged properties, just need to be very careful about who they hire to do the work. They need to really check them out, make sure they're licensed contractors, make sure they have insurance, because in a lot of cases, a lot of fly-by-night people are going to be coming into the market looking for quick deposit money, and you'll never see them again. And we see that time and time again. So people need to really do their due diligence before they hire somebody. And certainly don't sign a contract until you've looked at it very carefully and you've gotten some advice from somebody who knows what they're doing.
Another issue, of course, that's getting a lot of attention, landlords hiking rents in the face of all this, and there are certain laws on the books that are supposed to prevent the price gouging and all that. What is your view of what's going on out there?
Well, it's very unfortunate, and certainly there are probably a number of cases of price gouging going on because people just aren't familiar with these complicated regulations that we had and that we have in place. And, as I said, there's been an outpouring of property owners who really want to help. And we're seeing a lot of people who, for the first time, are willing to rent their properties, and they're just not familiar with these laws. But they're putting a single-family home on the market that they may have never rented before. And, they're getting displaced people coming by with lots of insurance money, and they're bidding up the price. And, these property owners don't really understand what the rules are. And then they're getting slammed with some city attorney or California Attorney General letter threatening to fine them and take them to court when they're just really, really trying to help. And in other cases, we've seen prices go up by more than 10% from how things were priced prior to January 7th. But, what we found is in most of these cases, there are owners who have realize that there's a demand for furnished units because people lost everything. So they're going out, they're renting furniture, they're adding it to the price of the rent at their cost, and they're getting slammed by all these, attorneys threatening them with fines and lawsuits. And it's just really unfortunate because, people's heart are really into helping other people, yet they're being taken to task by renter groups and some of these attorneys, and it's very unfortunate.
All right. What about what's happening at City Hall, and how are any new regulations being considered impacting? What's the outlook on the regulation front out of City Hall?
Yeah, that's just another terrible crime being perpetrated on property owners, Frank. We live in an area where, some 7 to 8 million people live. And sure, there's probably, maybe 10,000 or so renters that have been displaced. Yet the city council wants to implement, once again, COVID-era regulations, eviction moratoriums. They want to freeze rent for up to a year, possibly longer, because they like to extend those types of regulations. And, property owners have suffered enough. We went 4 years without rent increases, eviction moratoriums that left us holding the bag on $1 billion of unpaid rent just in Los Angeles alone. And yet they want to do this again to property owners. And it's just unfortunate. And we're very hopeful that, some of the more moderate city council members will see fit not to pass this motion that's up for a vote on Friday morning. Yet they continue to see these democratic socialists try to implement these types of ordinances that just, really are taking people's property rights away, their hard-earned investments, the investments that they sacrificed for. And, as a result, we're seeing owners lose their properties today, and smaller owners who make up the majority of rental housing are selling their properties. They're getting out of business, and we see more corporations coming into the market. And, it's not good for anybody.
Daniel YUKELSON, the executive director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. A big job at this critical time. Daniel YUKELSON, thank you very much for that important update, and we'll keep a line open to you as the recovery continues. This is Mottek on Money on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Well, now with the U.S. debt at more than $36 trillion and climbing, a possible recession on the horizon, and the development of the digital dollar central bank digital currency, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and your silver. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. The number to call, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Following the latest news out of the Middle East, President Trump today urging Israel to cancel its ceasefire deal with Hamas. And in his words, let all hell break out if Hamas does not return the remaining hostages still being held in Gaza by 12 noon this Saturday. Earlier, Hamas threatened to postpone the next hostage release scheduled to take place on Saturday until further notice, accusing Israel of breaking the ceasefire deal. President Trump meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah II today, repeating during a meeting with President Trump, Jordan's and the region's opposition to the president's plan to resettle millions of Palestinians out of Gaza. Also, we heard today from the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said if Hamas does not return the Israeli hostages by Saturday afternoon, the ceasefire will be terminated. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a statement following a meeting with his security cabinet today. The hostages were taken during the Hamas terror attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, which started the Israel-Hamas war. Joining us live now, following all these developments closely, Middle East expert Lisa DAFTARI, editor of the Foreign Desk. Lisa, thank you very much for taking the call on these major developments, and give us your reaction to this latest news here.
Yeah, this is the same posturing, the strength, the might that we had hoped to see on October 8th, 2023. that it wouldn't take a year and a half and that we would still have hostages, civilians, babies, toddlers being held by a terror organization, and even Americans being held by a terror organization. That's first and foremost. So definitely Donald Trump, 3 weeks in office, is definitely making it known that there's a new sheriff in office, and that he's going to be dealing with Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran's regime very differently than the previous administration, and he's putting them on notice. The ceasefire and the hostage deal that was announced days before President Trump got into office was interesting, because the Trump administration, just coming into office, was brought in on the 1 yard line, where they was forced into a friendly negotiation. We sent our envoy, Steve Witkoff, to Qatar to sit down, again, on the 1 yard line, and they were able to carve out some sort of ceasefire. Even then, a lot of analysts like myself said, this is not going to hold. We're dealing with a terrorist organization. As much as the Trump administration does not negotiate with terrorists in the way that they were brought in to those negotiations, that was again, what they were brought in to. Now we're seeing a bit of a pivot from Trump, where he's saying, listen, this is the arrangement we had. If you're not going to deliver the hostages by noon on Saturday, here's the ultimatum, that Israel has our full blessing to go ahead and reinstate the war. And that is absolutely the language of might, the language of power, and that positioning of the American brand of deterrence that we need in order to deal with a terrorist organization.
And President Trump, during his meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah II today, expressed upset over how the hostage releases have been going. A couple at a time, and in terrible shape. He lamented what he saw recently, as really the whole world should, right? What about this? The way we've seen this process play out, and what do you think is going to happen on Saturday?
Look, it's horrific. If you've been watching, for anyone who's been following it, Donald Trump today very accurately characterized them as looking like they went through the Holocaust. As they came out emaciated, it looked like they went through a very horrific ordeal, and that is absolutely what they have been telling us. They were put into these terror tunnels. They were badly beaten. With women, one of them lost fingers. Obviously raped and beaten, and they have gone through the most horrific ordeals. And again, it's crazy to watch this play out over a year and a half, with really now having these hostages trickle out, and we don't even know how many of them are alive or will remain alive. Right now is a very critical moment, because before this most recent ceasefire and hostage deal, the Israeli government had estimated that about half of the remaining hostages, 100 or so, are estimated to be alive. And now we believe that number is probably going to be less, or it's going to be, there are going to be fewer of them coming out alive, because they will be killed now, or they will be tortured now, or it's just, the duration of this ordeal has been so horrific for these hostages. I want to remind people that, again, most of them being just civilians, and even the members of the military. Everyone in Israel, every civilian is part of the army, and every military member is a civilian. And everyone serves in the IDF. They feel united in that cause, that there is this time period where young, kids from 18 to 20 spend time serving their country in some capacity. And because of that, we're dealing with young soldiers that are being held hostage.
Yes. Lisa Daftari, editor of the Foreign Desk. We'll keep an open line to you as we follow all these developments closely approaching that Saturday deadline. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon on Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Wealth building expert Candy Valentino paves the path to success.
I was a founder before I could legally order a drink. Now my goal is to help you. And I interview guest experts.
David Anderson, I love what you said. I always say that you never learn in an echo chamber.
It's how we connect those dots to help us achieve the things we want to.
Tony Robbins, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, everybody loses money investing. Make sure you win in the long term.
How did you get rich?
I had to sum it up. It's a lot of hard work.
The Candy Valentino Show. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.